goal too.
I definitely see it as a separate goal. The only thing that as you were reading it and I was kind of processing it was I also, and maybe this is not needing to be here, but I kind of thought of, because me personally in the classroom, I'm seeing a lot of the focus is on the students that have had learning loss, but then because now those gaps are so large that we also need to really be focusing on those high level learners also, and making sure that we're challenging them, and sometimes you have to think of, like, we're talking about all students, but realistically there are your students that have a lot of learning loss, but then you have your kids that really didn't skip a beat, and we have to kind of keep making sure that we're challenging them too. So that's the only thing that my mind kind of went into as I was reading this, but I would almost like to make sure that, like, that's kind of on the forefront of our minds also.
Yeah, and I think the acceleration roadmap from the state speaks to that really clearly about grade level standards with individualized differentiation based on individual student needs. And I think when I think of differentiation, we're not just thinking about supporting the students who are struggling. Those students are advanced and are there activities for extension? So those students who are done with assignment early have an opportunity to go beyond that. Yeah, absolutely needs to be included there.
Anything else on goal 3? Goal 4?
Goal 4, communication and community relations. Develop a plan to increase and improve communication with the community, to solicit community input into district initiatives, the school budget, and policies. Additionally, I will be visible throughout the district, regularly visiting classrooms in both schools, participating in learning walks, meeting with school building administrators, providing opportunities to the community to meet with me, and attending school and community events.
Makes me so happy.
Yeah, definitely love it.
Thought you guys meant like
And that kind of
one.
goes into our subcommittees and,
Yeah.
you know, our overall plan and goals as well. So it's great to see those align and,
They all feather into the overall
right.
sort of direction I feel like we're trying to get to and get there. So any specific questions to goal 4? And goal 5.
Goal 5, and really like the intro into all these goals, that paragraph really speaks to this. So as a professional practice goal, the new superintendent induction program, develop skills and strategy development, data analysis, and instructional leadership by actively engaging in the first year of the new superintendent induction program. Really encouraged by the program to make this our professional practice goal. I think there's a lot of learning that's happening there. It's great. We have, I think it's the largest cohort of new superintendents since this program's been in existence. I think we're cohort 12. I think we're up to 39 new superintendents in the state, and that's 39 of, I think, 275 superintendents in the state.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
you know, so it's great to be able to have their perspective, and just as helpful, the coaches are all either former superintendents or retired superintendents who are in other states. For example, my coach right now is retired in Massachusetts, but a superintendent in New Hampshire. So getting that perspective, we had a meeting actually today and heard a little bit about the entry plan that another local superintendent had put into place about 5 years ago, and how that plan turns into strategy development and all that. So it's been a really supportive, helpful program, and they've really encouraged us to use that as our professional practice goal.
So that's great. And those, you've started those already, so that's nice. And it's ultimately is it a 3-year thing?
It is. So the program is a 3-year program. We started in early July. We had our first in-person meeting. In August, we had 2 2-hour virtual meetings. We don't have a meeting in September. October is 2 virtual 2-hour meetings, and then there's face-to-face and virtual over the course of the year. Go over case studies, like I said, looking at other people's entry plans, strategic plans. Right? And I think, right, it's a position where there's only one of you in the district. So to have that as a resource in addition to the local superintendent roundtables and things like that, it's really been helpful to bounce ideas off of, and even just listen in to hear what other superintendents are thinking about or struggling with and get some ideas from them. It's been really helpful thus far.
Excellent. Any other questions on that? So now overall, are there questions like for next steps and all that you had talked about, like rolling this up for the subcommittee kind of thing, Jill? So what were you thinking with that?
I guess I'm just curious about, just thinking about that process in general, just because I think there's a lot of steps to it and maybe a lot of things that we'll need to kind of fine tune as we go through it. And it might be helpful along with, if we need to meet is the other subcommittees and things like that too. It might be helpful to do it in that way. And I was looking at the goals and then thinking about the process and, what it looks like, as an educator and, also just hearing from the other superintendents that I know, it's a large process. And just thinking about doing that in the midst of this meeting, I think would be tricky. Just because a lot of it might be organization of materials and things like that too. So I just wanted to put that out there as a consideration for the committee.
Well, I do think it's probably a good idea to have that kind of committee, because I think as we've noticed with like starting to flesh out the calendar and stuff, it'd be nice if that didn't get lost in the shuffle, because there's going to be multiple parts and things that we need to keep on. We'll have the dates there, but the way I'm like envisioning, we have stuff that we do at every meeting, and the way we're doing that, I don't know how we're going to be able to go through the process. So if we had the subcommittee, then there's time, as the committee feels it needs to meet to be able to, and that at one meeting a month to be able to get together. And it may not be every month, but it might be, every second or third month, or however we decide to do it. So
I don't know if you want to just think about that and just move it forward to consider for new business for the next meeting or something like that,
Yeah, well, next meeting is a subcommittee meeting. It was one of the things that we needed to talk about at the end, just reinforce which committees are meeting next time, and we can add it as a new business as a part of our quick business meeting for the next time, just to see, give everyone the couple weeks to think about it, and who might want to be on it, and then when we would want to have that kind of start to roll in based on how things are looking with the calendar, et cetera, et cetera. Does that seem good? Yes? No? Yeah. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do think, like, thinking about the process, there's a lot to it. There's layers and layers to it. And I think there's probably going to be some front-loaded work that would need to be done by the subcommittee. And I think once we get that, I think to your point, then it becomes maybe once every other month or every couple months. But once I think establishing the process is important.
So we'll have that be part of our business meeting for next time for new business and talk about it. And then before we break at the end, we'll talk about which committees will be on the agenda for next time. Is there anything else on goals or anything else that you guys want to talk about as far as that? Is anything else that you want to bring up?
I guess I just have one question. If that's going to be on the next meeting, should we put the goals on for a vote for the next meeting, or wait till our first meeting in November to vote on the goals? Because I think technically you need to vote to approve the goals. So if we're going to talk about the subcommittee at the next meeting, does it make sense to wait till the first November meeting? Or
are you okay if we wait till the first meeting? I think.
I would go to our next meeting.
Yeah.
Was that the official? I wouldn't wait till November.
All right, so we'll have it be superintendent goals to vote for the next meeting. Everyone can kind of look over them and see, and then also we'll talk about fleshing out the subcommittee. So we'll have two items under new business before we break for the subcommittee portion of the meeting. And then that way we'll be able to vote. And if you think of anything else or want to change anything else, you have time to do that, just let us know so that we can vote on what is the final version.
Okay.
Yes?
Mhm.
All right.
I mean, are you comfortable with what you presented and there was no kind of concerns or?
Yeah, other than the one that I had mentioned, feeling like it was redundant, but I feel like in some ways your questions have helped like me flesh that out as well. So, no, I'm certainly comfortable with it. And again, if people have feedback in the next days or week, you can certainly reach out to me.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the school enrollment dashboard. I don't know if Stacy's on. Do we need her for that?
I believe she's on if we need her.
And the resources one is in that separate folder. Alex, can you promote Stacy if she's on, just so she can be available if we have anything?
Just as a reminder, I know we went over it last month and again in August. This is reflective of the September data. So the holistic data year to date is in the charts to the right, but.
All right. So any questions or anything on this? So like I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. So in the very first one, monthly enrollment breakdown, these are new enrollments since August that have the 3 new enrollments are ones that have just come in from September 1 to September 30.
Correct. Yep. And then same with the next chart down, the withdrawal breakdown, those students left from beginning of September to end of September.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've been fluctuating, but we're.
Chart is the current month or from month to month, correct?
The chart to the right. Are you asking?
To the left where it says like new enrollment, one in first grade, one in
Yep.
K, one in pre-K.
Yes.
But then like the one below it would be where they left from.
So the top chart is enrollment is entry and the bottom chart is withdrawal.
Right.
Yep.
But it's for, so it's
September.
August.
No,
Okay,
the month of
September.
September.
As of September
Yeah.
1st. Yes.
As of September 1st. Okay.
No, this is September's data. This is.
Yeah. Starting to, as of September 1st to September 30th.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought I understood. So we were down 5 overall
A
from
net loss of 5. Yes.
from where we started, and I find that so disturbing and hurt, like it's just hurting us.
Yeah.
I guess
And go ahead.
the only thing that I kind of.
Yeah, I'd see the same thing, right? Like they moved out of town, but that still feels like an opportunity where we don't know where they moved to, but potentially they could have stayed.
For me, it was more of a resident, non-resident, but again, it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
As hard as it is to see, though, I will say, like, just to thank Stacy and you guys for putting it together, because it's so important that we track, like, that we're seeing this, and it's kind of eye-opening and very helpful to get a month by month. It is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think for me, and we talked about this in August, we're looking at the same thing every month, right? It's the same form, it's coming in the same format, and we can add to it or take away from it as anybody sees fit. But I think there were times last year where we ended up looking at something one month and the next meeting we're looking at something different. And I think that added to the confusion, because it can be confusing even for us who live it, right? That there's certain things that are difficult to wrap your head around. So,
And non-resident tuition enrollment is going in or coming out?
coming in. Yep.
And so
we have 2 students who their home district pays us a tuition to attend.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that that I was understanding. I feel like I have it wrapped around my head and then I start looking at them and sit here and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. Sometimes just when you scroll down to a new chart, it is right. Yeah.
So is it normal to have right in the beginning of the school year, I think in most schools, fluctuation like this, like it's normal?
Yeah. And I think it is normal. Yes. I also think because school started on August 30th, and some students had made this decision not to come even as of August 30th, but didn't do the paperwork or didn't fill it out until 2 days into school, that might adjust for some of it as well.
So what's the next expected fluctuation? Would that be like in January?
I think every month you could see some fluctuation. I think it's fairly limited once you get going. There could be something mid-year. Even towards the end of the year, you end up getting some, but it's really going to be June, July, August, September, typically when you're seeing the biggest changes, because then you're accounting for your graduates, you're accounting for new school choice students who might be choicing out, like all that's happening typically in the spring as people are making their decisions for the year ahead.
Do you mind quickly just clarifying with the unknown home plans now that this is September? Is that just October? Right. It's October, but this data is for September. I was just curious. Does that mean that we hadn't heard back whether they were homeschooling, or I thought there was a deadline to hear from them? There's 3 in that column.
Yeah, so that just is likely their plans haven't been finalized or approved. So everything from last year needed to be turned in, reviewed before we can review and approve an application for the upcoming year. So I think that will speak to that, and because it should be getting cleared up now, so I can certainly follow up on that, and I can include it in my superintendent's report on the 19th just to try to get you some clarity for that.
I do have a question, only because we didn't have a document like this before, but as my attention's drawn to that homeschool one, is that like a pretty typical amount of kids that are homeschooling, or is this still like a repercussion of last year that number still seems so high?
I think it's partly a repercussion from last year. We've been pre-pandemic, we were in like the 14, 15, 16 range. So yeah, that's pretty significant, almost double. Yeah.
Right, 26%.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I think if people had the opportunity to kind of really try it out, that maybe we're thinking about it before, and it does work for certain families. I don't think it's all COVID necessarily, but it just gave that, gave them that push to try it out. And yeah, that's not necessarily a reflection on, not wanting to come back to Granby, but maybe for, their families. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I was just curious if that's a pretty typical amount, or is it higher than usual?
For us, it's higher than usual.
So looking at that homeschool chart, there's one in grade 11 where it says no homeschool request, but they're totaled in the grand total of kids homeschooling. So define no homeschool request.
Who's doing pretty good, Stacy?
It seems like it's supposed to be self-explanatory, but if they're not a homeschool request, then they should be in a district, and hopefully our district. So does that mean they're just not accounted for, or?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't get there it goes. That was just a placeholder, so it shouldn't be counted in there. So that was in order to get it to say 1 through 12 and then 0K. Because there's no 11th grade request, it would have said 1 through 10, 12, 0K.
So we're
So
really
it's-
at 25.
Yes.
So I
So
guess
that,
into the committee would be, would you rather not have 11th grade on there?
I'd rather see an NA or something rather than a one with the number or put the number 0 in so that it's an actual, because 26 is not an actual number.
so it's a pivot table. So I can't get a blank in there, a 0. I can take it out altogether. So it can say 1 through 10, 12, and 0K. So 11 would just be missing.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather.
And then next time we'll all ask you why 11's not.
Maybe we'll put an asterisk
We just
under
have
it.
to have
Yeah.
a notes column or
Yeah.
something. Stuff is
Yeah.
because to me, the 26 is more misleading than having 11 missing because our whole point in having all of this information is so we really have
Accurate
an
numbers.
accurate number. And that's, to me, is like a glaring thing where it's not really an accurate number. I get that, we've got a no homeschool request, but when you're looking, like when I scan through these, I'm looking at sort of like the grand total thing, and then I look back at the aggregate data. And so that's where I want to make sure that we really can look at quick glance and see everything accurately.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And thank you for catching that. That's something as many times as I've looked at this chart that I've overlooked.
Yeah. And I think that's consistent with what you did in the monthly withdrawal breakdown, where it only has 2, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, and pre-K. So
Yep.
by not having 11th grade there, there's some consistency. So
Yeah, so I can absolutely update that for next month.
Perfect.
perfect. Thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome.
You're the worst micromanager ever.
Can you use a different shade of red on that?
Oh, and I felt like I was doing pretty good. I didn't have to go Stacy in and
Sorry about that, Stacy.
No, it's quite all right. That's what I'm here for.
And we're nitpicking it because we do love it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
to be able to look at it and see all the questions that we've been having sort of there. And it's scary to see those numbers at the bottom, but they're there and we're doing it. So good. Any other questions on any of this for anybody? Sorry to bother you, Stacy. Thanks a lot.
No, that's okay. I'm actually going to jump off. I got to get my little one to bed. So
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Stacy.
you're welcome. See you.
All right, mask updates.
So the commissioner extended the mask mandate through November 1st. There is some conversation around districts going as of October 15th if they have the 80% rate, but again, I think districts are waiting for some more information on calculating those numbers and who's included in those numbers and who's not included in those numbers. So we haven't gotten guidance on that, but still really, I think district-wide, we're seeing our school age students not quite at that level. So we're probably not part of that conversation in addition to the Board of Health's Granby mask mandate. But it seems at the moment that the state's going to go month by month with the masks. And I'll certainly keep you guys up to date as I get information from them.
Excellent. Any questions or anything about that? All right, testing program.
So the testing program in general, and when I speak in general, has been statewide, has been a source of anxiety, frustration for when I'm on the superintendent roundtable calls. I think every superintendent's talking about the testing program. And as frustrated as I am with the issues we've had in Granby, I feel fortunate not to have some of the issues that those superintendents are dealing with. Nancy Jenks, as you all know, has been around rock star. She's a tremendous help. She goes above and beyond. We are excited to announce that we are going to do our first round of pool testing tomorrow. We are going to do it ourselves. So the support that we were promised from the state, we are still waiting on, but we feel we have enough to go on tomorrow. We have the consents, we have the supplies, and we're going to give it a go, just on a smaller scale than we had hoped, but at least one pool in both schools is our goal for tomorrow.
Now, are the schools grade specific, or I know we talked about it, and I'll be perfectly honest, it's just not staying with me.
That's okay. Yeah, so we're as grade specific as we can be because we're trying to have pools of 10. So, sometimes a grade's having 4 kids, so we're going into that next grade. But we can shift those pools around and as we learn a little bit more. And we had a program coordinator assigned to us, which is, so CIC Health is the state vendor. They're subcontracting with local company, not always local companies, but other companies to provide the support and staffing that is required in the schools. And we were assigned a program coordinator who's supposed to be like our liaison, our point person. They're going to order the supplies. They're going to plan the testing. They're going to upload the consents. And Nancy's done all of that. So there was a call with local government officials, state senators last week, and superintendents. I posed a question in that about our testing. The Associate Commissioner, Russell Johnson, was on that call. He reached out to me afterwards. He put me in contact with the president of CIC Health, who followed up that day. The dialogue since last Wednesday has been much better. They removed the program coordinator that we had, and my understanding is the company that person worked for and is assigning us a new program coordinator. We've been in touch with the company, but they haven't assigned us a program coordinator. So understandably, there's some training and things that needs to be done on their end. So we want to make sure the people that we have the training that's required. So they're hopeful by the end of this week that we have someone, but CIC and Norton, who we've been working with the past week, have been helpful, even though Nancy's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They've been a good resource. They've gotten us some supplies quicker than we expected, and some other mechanisms to hopefully make the testing go a little bit more smoothly. So I don't know if excited is the right word, but we're encouraged that we're going to try to run a testing tomorrow on our own. And understandably, there might be some hiccups along the way, and we're going to learn from it. And but we feel we owe it to our families. We have 154 consents back from families as of today, and and I said it to them last week that we got these consents, many of them back in August, and we haven't run around of testing yet through no fault of ours. But, so we have the supplies, and we're going to try to do it, albeit on a smaller scale than we had hoped. But it'll be a good lesson for us. And then the plan is to run another round next week. And if we have support, it might be more than the one pool at both schools.
Excited and nervous.
Right. I don't want to go. I want to go down the rabbit hole, but I feel like I just have to ask. Really sorry, guys, but just to clear that up. So if we run 2 pools, and you said that it could be 2 grades to get that 10 number, I guess
Staff could be included. Staff are included as well.
So I had just thought originally that the pool testing would have been say grade specific, and then if there was a positive, then we would go from there, because it was kind of to rule the asymptomatic. But if it's multiple groups in the pool, how do you identify what area to target? So
regardless, you would have to, if there's a positive in the pool, everybody has to go back for a second test, regardless of if it was a K through 12 pool or a first grade pool.
Okay. Thank you. See, never mind. It wasn't that bad. I was like, it's just going over my head. I'm just so.
And we're
Yeah, so the pool is basically like a dipstick to see if there's anything
In the
in your
score.
random sample.
Yep.
And if you get a positive back, then there's next steps that would need to be taken.
Gotcha.
So that's where, so the way we have it right now, my understanding is they go and they spit in the vial once, and then we can do multiple tests out of that. So we're not calling people out more than once, right? Or are we not doing that way because it's different?
No,
supplies?
we're still doing the spit one, but I don't know that multiple samples can be taken from that.
Okay,
Nancy
it
might be
does-
on,
We
but
don't need to go down there.
I
You guys
do
know,
see a
you've been
hand
down
up.
you've been down it a number of
I was gonna
times.
say, you actually answered my question perfectly, so thank you.
Okay.
It was just like one of those, I think we've looked at this so many times that I almost made it more complicated than it needed to be.
yeah, no, and I think there's,
We don't
there's
need to go, we don't need to, no, we don't.
perfect.
We don't. Nope. I have complete faith in what you're doing.
Thank you, Nancy.
You can put your hand down now. All right. Any other questions on the testing program? Okay. Next up is your report.
Great. So I gave you all a heads up a couple weeks ago that I was going to be requesting vaccination status from all of our staff. That letter went out last week. It was vetted through the GEA and MTA prior to sending it out, as well as our attorney. To date, the vaccination status based on the request we have, and they have until Friday to return their proof of vaccination. We have 144 total staff, and right now we have 92 vaccinated, 44 unvaccinated, and 48 that we have not that haven't responded yet. So we're in a really good place. If those numbers continue to play that way, we're going to be really close to that 80% for staff wise. So that's encouraging, and the staff's been great. Jackie's been buried in emails and COVID cards and things like that, but we're maintaining them in our electronic health records. So the nursing team has access, or the only ones that have access once Jackie hands that off. So in a good place there. Marcus talked about trunk or treat. So it's a shift from the past where we've done our trick or treating at the junior, senior high school, but we're collaborating with the Granby Police Department again, and some other local organizations to offer that on October 28th. So probably on the 19th, we'll have a little bit more information on that. MCAS parent reports were sent home yesterday. So people can contact their child's main office if they have any questions or did not receive a report. We are working on like some data slides that we'll present to you all likely at the November meeting is what we're looking at. Working with the emergency preparedness team. I feel like at some point as principal, I mentioned that, but for the past 3 or 4 years, I've worked with the Granby police and fire departments as an emergency preparedness team. We plan drills, lockdowns, shelter in place, fire drills, anything like that. It goes certainly beyond us. Council on Aging, McDuffie are included, Alice training. We do a lot of that work. And we met last week for the first time this year and meeting in the next week with Chief O'Grady and Officer Gilly to review our district's emergency operations plan. That has not been updated since May of 2016, so it's in significant need of updates. And I don't think, right, the meat of it is going to change a lot, but there's names, there's contacts, there's things in there that should be up to date.
So how often should that be updated?
Say probably annually for things like that,
Yeah.
right? You know, I don't think the big pieces have changed. What we do,
So
you know, our response is a choice response, which most schools are now, that based on the information that you have, you make a choice based on the scenario.
Right.
But
So are we still collaborating with outside of like with McDuffie or other schools on if there comes a need
Yeah.
we use those facilities.
So I think that's part of what we're going to start meeting on is reinforcing those partnerships and collaborations with places like McDuffie, Belchertown, South Hadley. We talk about you should have one in both directions on 202 should you ever have to shut down traffic in one way. Right. But I think right now the problem is, right, if somebody was there in 2016, who's to say that's the contact now? So that's something that we met on, like I said, last week, and then Chief O'Grady, Officer Gilly, and I are going to start digging through that and making some updates to that plan. But again, the plan, we have an emergency medical response plan already in place. That's updated, I think every 3 years, but we just uploaded that to the state in August. So the components of it, I'm not as worried about as some of like the contact information, the partnership, the agreements that we've had with other communities and things like that, that we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
And is that something you bring back to the committee to share out?
Of course.
Or policy?
No, it won't. I don't think it would need to go to policy. It's more of a plan. I think the policy is probably that we need to have one, and we probably need to update it regularly. But absolutely, once we have at least a draft version or final draft version, we'll certainly bring it here. The good thing is we're in constant communication with the police and fire. I meet with them monthly now with the emergency prep team. We collaborate really well, but we want to make sure what's on paper matches up with what we're doing in practice.
I love it. That's great.
Want to let everyone know too, Nancy Jenks has been offering CPR and first aid training to district staff. We did CPR yesterday. She's got another CPR class, and then she has 2 first aid classes coming up. She can teach classes up to 8 people. I know she had a lot of signups for certain classes, but others had some openings. I think yesterday we only had 4 people in it. So if staff are interested in that, I would suggest reaching out to Nancy. We are now reporting our weekly COVID cases to the state. So that's a shift that came out, I think, right either before or after our last meeting. We are now reporting that. It needs to be reported every Wednesday evening. And it basically goes from Wednesday evening until the following Wednesday. You're including any staff or student cases there. And then I think people have seen I'm sending home a weekly report, but we're maintaining the daily updates as well that people can link to. And then I talked about office hours, open office hours last week, and Stacy is working on getting them posted to the website. If you have been on our website, please know it just transitioned from, I'm not saying it was in a great place before, but it just transitioned from one model to another, and not everything is migrated. We're working with the vendor. No, I don't love it. I don't love it either. And there was nobody. I haven't heard anyone tell me that they love it. So,
Sorry
I like it.
no,
I'm just kidding.
no. But I think like there's some things that we can do on our end to make it more manageable, and we need to work with the vendor to make sure that everything's migrated over, and we're working on that. So we're aware, please bear with us. But yeah, I think you mentioned consternation before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's all I have.
Any questions or any follow-up for Stephen? Adam, you're up.
Sure, I got a handful of things. Monday, we submitted our ESSER 3 application. That's the big one in the amount of $658,923. Hopefully we'll hear back on that pretty soon. And then we also had an additional special education allocation. It's part of the ESSER ARP funding. It was $59,000, just over $59,000 that we're going to use towards special education services over the next year. Parts are finally starting to come in for the damage done here at East Meadow when we had that lightning storm. I believe I know ALC was here today replacing all the cards, so we had access back to our HVAC system. I believe that is complete. So that is all done. We are still waiting on parts for our security system, and those are hopefully in transit here, and we can have that fixed as soon as possible. We've obviously seen some delays with supply chain, transportation, everything that COVID has been, all the problems COVID has caused. We're seeing that with this. So the HVAC is back up and running, and we're just waiting on parts for the security system. Hopefully that's soon.
Yeah. And I want to mention Adam, John, they are being the squeaky wheel. They are reaching out. It's not for lack of effort on our end, certainly. And I think some of the circumstances are just well beyond our control. Happy to have automated logic here today. That actually happened a little sooner than we had anticipated. So, you know, it certainly can't happen fast enough. We had this conversation in July. So, yeah, we're getting there.
Questions on that?
I don't have questions on that, but I have, are you done?
No.
Okay, I'll wait. You're probably going to answer this.
Okay. I got a few more things. So the RFP for the kitchen at the high school, Steve has followed up with Chris, I believe it was yesterday morning, to see where we're at with that. So we're still waiting to hear back from Chris to see how we should move forward with that RFP. We hired our 5th custodian, so we are now fully staffed with custodians, which is awesome. So he is in training. He started the end of last week. This week's in training, and then we'll have 2 morning shifts, 2 night shifts, and then a swing shift, which is part morning, part afternoon. So we'll be fully staffed with custodians. And then lastly, Chartwells, I'll have Chartwells here at the next meeting just to give their update as to where we are.
So next meeting the 19th or the first one in November?
Well, so I know the next one is a committee meeting, but they'll be quick. So I don't know if we want to put them on there, or do we want to?
What do you guys think?
Wait.
It's usually pretty quick. So
yeah, they're usually pretty quick. They'll just review the September numbers and so that's why I offered them that meeting, knowing it was committee, but I know it's a quick presentation with them. So
that seems okay.
But if you want me to put it the 1st November one, I certainly can.
What do you all think?
I think that one's fine because we'll have a lot of other stuff to do.
Who knows what November 2nd will hold at that point, so.
One thing that I wanted to, my question was sort of about the kitchen, but how is it going with Chartwell's preparing all the food here and bringing in next door? Is it working out okay, or?
It is. Yep, excellent. It is. They're doing the best. We kind of made a little space for that. We didn't make it. It was already there, but they kind of outfitted it to their needs. It's not ideal, but it's certainly giving them the opportunity to serve lunches. So yeah, it's working out.
Is there a variety, or is it just?
Yep. So there are a few a la carte items that they're offering at the high school.
Yep.
So yes, there are some options, and I can certainly have Ken and Chris kind of give some details on that when they.
And then my other question is supply. Are they finding issues?
Yeah, so we still are, and I mentioned it last meeting too. There's some supply issues with food. I have a feeling we're going to see those probably all year, but yes, they are, but they're doing their best.
Yep.
You know, we haven't had any major hiccups yet, but they're dealing with those quite well.
Yeah, it's resulted in switching up, instead of chicken nuggets, I think Fun Muffin Lunch got offered one day instead of it's substituting something else. It seems to be what they're having to do.
And I'm sure that's happening everywhere right now.
Yeah.
Like, you're constantly seeing that, the menu changes and.
And just while we're talking about Chartwell, didn't just pop in my head, but to remind you is that we will have to go out with a new RFP for food service program
this year,
sometime late winter, early spring. Because remember we signed that waiver last year due to COVID, they let us extend our contract if you in the last year.
So my question is, just because supply and that kind of thing, the cost, and would we have a better idea now that we're full in person of what that would be?
The cost
Like-
of,
Like the food, just because of supply, what the projected, I mean, just internally looking at it.
Mhm.
If we know internally what that looks like before they come back.
It's
Sure.
tricky this year though, because they're still doing.
yeah, so we're all free still.
But there's still a cost to that.
So there's still a cost, and the benefit last year was that we were able to provide meals over the weekend
Right, we're
and
not-
holidays, and we don't have that volume this year.
Correct. So we
So-
should have a better idea
Yep.
of how
Yeah,
much.
but at the same time, they're offering a la carte options to hope, to kind of close that gap.
Yeah.
But yes, we would have a more accurate idea of what the cost is.
Just a quick thought, as you were saying, about that was the winter, talking about
The RFP?
the RFP.
Yep.
Is that something that when you have a date, you can shoot over to that calendar subcommittee so we can put
Sure.
it on there so that it's on our radar? Look at
I
me.
might have put that on there.
I feel like it's kind of on it right now.
I might have put that on there. That if I didn't, it's a good reminder. I might have put that on there, but thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for Adam? Joe?
I had a meeting.
Yay!
I know, so it's gonna be every other month. So there was a meeting before the meeting for new members, and then in the actual meeting, they introduced formally, the new executive director, Todd Costa. Who,
Used to be
Superintendent Ludlow.
Ludlow.
yeah, so just formally in Ludlow, who's now at CES, and talked about the transition, his entry plan there, and what that looked like. There's typical meeting in terms of like elections of officers and subcommittee groups, things like that. There's a presentation about DYS or the Department of Youth Services and what that looked like in terms of staffing and programs for the youth that are served through that programming. We talked a lot about project-based learning, career exploration, family and community engagement for those students. And then we talked about currently serving about 659 students across the state. Then Todd presented his goals. We went through that process. And then just to kind of note, CES talked about, what they offer to districts, which obviously one of which is Granby, including professional development opportunities, which they've seen a big increase in districts, a lot of the money that's available to people right now. So schools take advantage of that. And they did highlight a couple programs that people were kind of taking of note within the area. One being a special education surrogacy program, which people don't necessarily need to know or know a lot about because it's a very specialized program, but often for unaccompanied youth and sometimes through GCAM for just extenuating circumstances for youth, they do offer that program. And they did mention too, there's a Massachusetts migrant education program. So students that come from families of migrant workers, they're trying to help support those families to ensure that they have stability in their education. So if they are moving from community to community, that they have some stability there. So those are just a few updates for you. It was great to see they kind of highlighted the different area districts that were utilizing CES for different programming, whether it was during school, after school, different things like that. And yeah, it was nice to see all those things happening.
Excellent. All right, so just to build our agenda for next time, which subcommittees do we want to have meet? I think calendar probably needs another go. Yes, no?
I would agree.
And then, do we want to continue with community relations since we are sort of on a little bit of a upward trajectory? Have those same two meet for next time? Is that good? All right, so we just, what did I just say? Calendar.
Communication.
Community relations. All right, and then, so those will be the two subcommittees. And then we have, our quick business meeting will be, to talk about, testing and what was the other one? I just had
The draft goals.
goals. Thank you.
I'd also like to be added, for a continuing business for the school capacity update.
Oh, great. Okay. That's not considered a subcommittee, is it?
No.
No? Okay. So school capacity. And then the reports, superintendent and finance. We don't need CES for next time because you won't have it. So, all right. So school capacity for continuing business. And then we have
Chart
goals.
goals too.
That's going to be new business, right?
Yep.
Superintendent goals.
And let's make sure that we reach out to Glenn about, to see if he can make it. I know he was.
Yeah, he
really-
was liking the
Yeah.
community relations.
I
So,
thought that was a great partnership there. So just we'll make sure we reach out and let them know that we're having it.
and then the chart wells will be, we probably should have them go first, right after consent agenda. Well, right after visitors' comments, but he can go first. And that is not really, where do you want that under?
New business? Yeah, I mean, be continuing business technically, but
All right, I think that's pretty much the agenda. Is there anything else? Anything else that we forgot? No? Excellent. If that's, do you have anything else?
Thank you.
If that's it, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody.